Solve the quadratic equation by factoring. Okay, I had lots of people do this. What is that when you FOIL it on the right?
16.
X squared minus 16.
Thank you.
That is not this. Okay, to factor, you always look for the greatest common factor to every term. What's common to both? X and then you set both factors equal to 0. So x is either 0 or 8. This is basic factoring from Algebra 1. Okay, so if this is the kind of stuff you're struggling with, you really need to come in and get some help. Okay, before you do anything factor-wise, you always look for the greatest common factor. What is it? 2. So I'm going to pull that out. 2x. If I divide both sides by 2, I still have 0 on the right. Right? So I can just get rid of the 2. And now I'm looking to factor this.
3 and 5.
Positive 5. Okay, so x is equal to negative 5 or positive 3.
Can you still put the bottoms up?
Yeah. So bottoms up, 2 times negative 30. So I have x squared plus 4x minus 60. Factors of 60 that equal 4, x plus 10, x minus 6, divided by 2, x plus 5, x minus 3. Same thing. Okay, write the expression, number 3, of 9 minus 7i minus 10 minus 6i in standard form. Okay, I had at least 2 people multiply these two. There is a minus between them, and this is a subtraction problem. You don't FOIL. But I must distribute the negative 1 to both terms, which several people didn't. And now I've got to combine my like terms. 9 minus 10 is negative 1. Negative 7i plus 6i is negative 1i. So there's my answer in complex form. No calculator still on these. Okay, 3 minus 7i, or 3 over 7 minus I. I must multiply by the conjugate. Distribute the 3 in. And then FOIL this. Well, there's not going to be a middle term. So it's just 49 minus I squared. 49 minus I squared is 49 plus 1. So to break this apart, 21 over 50 plus 3i over 50. That's complex standard form. Number 5 says solve. Okay, I had lots of people trying to complete the square here. There's no x term here, right? All I have to do is get the x's on one side and the constants on the other. So I subtract 1, take the square root of both sides, remembering my plus or minus. Sorry, not square root of 3. negative, well, it's just going to be 3i. Same with number 6, there's no middle term. So I just combine my like terms. Subtract 2y squared to get 2y squared on the left. Subtract 8 to get negative 8 on the right. Divide both sides by 2. Y squared equals negative 4. Take the square root of both sides. Plus or minus 2i. Solve the equation by completing the square. So I'm going to move the 12 over. Divide this by 2 and square it. 7 divided by 2 is 7 halves. Squared is 49 fourths. So I add that to the other side. I then factor this using whatever I squared. The sign here must match the sign here. And over here, I have negative 48 plus 49 is 1. So I have 1/4 on the right. Take the square root of both sides. Square root of 1/4 is 1/2. Add 7 halves. And I'm not done. I need a number. I don't want to just leave it like this. Okay, so 7 plus 1 is 8 over 2 is 4. 7 minus 1 is 6 over 2 is 3. There are my answers. This is the same as 7 plus or minus 1 all over 2. Right. Next one, complete the square. I didn't even give you ones with coefficients, so these should have been pretty easy. Subtract 2. Half of this is 2. 2 squared is 4. Must add it to the other side. This factors. Take the square root. Add 2. And now I can't simplify that. That's my answer. Nine and 10, use the quadratic formula. Okay, so A is 1, B is negative 10, C is 21. So negative B is positive 10 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2. So 10 plus or minus 100 minus 84 is 16 all over 2, which is 10 plus or minus 4 all over 2. 10 plus 4 is 14 over 2 is 7. 10 minus 4 is 6 over 2 is 3. Next one. A is 1, B is negative 3, C is 5. Negative B is positive 3, plus or minus B squared minus 4, A, C all over 2 is 3 plus or minus 9 minus 20 is negative 11. This is not complete. I cannot have a negative under the radical. 3 plus or minus 11, square root of 11i all over 2. (11 and 12), I'm amazed still. What is the discriminant? What's the equation for it?
B squared minus 4ac.
Just b squared minus 4ac. So many of you used the quadratic and solved the whole thing. The discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. And in fact, on this poster, it says right there, discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. Okay, if the discriminant is 0, there's one real solution. If the discriminant is positive, there's 2 real solutions. If the discriminant is negative, there's 2 imaginary solutions.
How come it says on that poster negative 0?
Well, it says no real, but that means there's 2 imaginary. And that's what I've told you in class repeatedly. If there's just one, if it's equal to 0, 1 real. If it's positive, 2 real. If it's negative, 2 imaginary. And the question said, find the discriminant and give the number and type. So just telling me that that's real is not the number. I need to know, is it 1 real or is it 2 real? Is it 2 imaginary? What's the answer? So b squared minus 4ac. So here's the equation. Plus 2x minus 5 equals 0. A is 4. B is 2. C is negative 5. So b squared minus 4ac. Well, this is going to be a positive, and it's positive 80. My discriminant is 84. That's half a point. Telling me what that means is another half. That means there are 2 real solutions. Okay, before you find the discriminant, you must always get it into standard form before I assign a, b, and c. So this is x squared minus 3x plus 7 equals 0. A is 1, b is negative 3, c is 7. B squared is 9 minus 4 times a times c. 9 minus 28 is negative 19. This tells me there are 2 imaginary solutions. Vertical motion problem. It uses the model negative 16 t squared plus vt plus s. And it tells us s is the initial height, and it tells us the initial height is 6 feet. So I plug that in. V is the initial velocity, and v is 30. It gives us that. So this is my original formula, and that's equal to height. And it says the football is caught at a height of 7 feet. Find the time. So I just replace the height with 7. Minus 1. And now I just have a quadratic that I put into the quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Well, this is a negative. 4 times 16 times 1, I have 3 negatives, so that's going to stay negative. So it's 900 minus 64 is 836. So this is negative 30 plus or minus the square root of 836 over negative 32. So I'm just going to calculate this. Negative 30 plus the square root of 836 divided by negative 32 is positive 0.03 seconds. The other one I have is negative 30 minus the square root of 836 divided by negative 32 is 1.84. Well, I have to recognize this is a parabola, right? And it starts at a height of 6, and it goes up, and then it comes back down. So it's going to hit 7 here and here. Well, I want to know where it was caught at 7 feet, not when it crossed 7 feet on the way up. Okay, so when I look at my answers, this is going to be what time it was, how many seconds passed on the way up. This is going to be how much time until it was caught at 7 feet. So this is my answer. Graphing. At this point, maybe it would be helpful if I talk you through how you graph in 3 different forms. How you graph in standard form, how you graph in intercept form, and how you graph in vertex form. Okay? So let's just do, I'm trying to come up with one that's x squared plus 7x plus 10. Okay, let's start in standard form. Okay, in standard form, the first thing you can see in standard form is the y-intercept.
Yeah.
What is it?
10.
10. So my y-intercept happens to be at 0, 10. So I have my first point. To find my vertex in standard form, I use negative b over 2a, which is negative 7 over 2. So my vertex happens at negative 3.5. But I don't know what the y-coordinate is until I plug that back in for x. So negative 7 halves squared is 49 fourths plus 7 times negative 7 halves plus 10. 49 fourths minus 49 halves plus 10. Get a common denominator of 4 minus 98 fourths plus 40 fourths. 49 minus 98 is negative 49 plus 40 is negative 9 fourths.
Did you just square to get 49 fourths?
Mm-hmm. Because I just plugged it into the equation.
Oh, okay.
Plug it in for x, solve for y. Negative 9 fourths. Okay. So my vertex happens to be negative 7 halves, negative 9 fourths. That's where my vertex is. So negative 7 halves is negative 3.5, and this is negative 2 1/4. 1, 2, 3 1/2, 1, 2 1/4. There's my vertex. My y-intercept is at 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it's got to go through up there. It would help me if I could find the zeros, and you should. You find the zeros by either factoring, completing the square, using the quadratic formula. Well, this one is factorable. How do I factor it? Nope. How do I factor it? This is section 1 of chapter 5. Factoring when the coefficient is 1, 5 and 2. Right? So this is x plus 5, x plus 2. Set it equal to 0. My intercepts are negative 5 and negative 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So I know this is my axis of symmetry. So I can mirror this over. It is 1, 2, 3 1/2 away. So I go 1, 2, 3 1/2 away. There's a 5th point now. I've got my vertex, my zeros, and my intercept mirrored over the axis of symmetry, and I can graph it. That's how you graph in standard form. Use your y-intercept, find your vertex, factor, complete the square, use the quadratic formula, whatever you need to find the zeros. Mirror the y-intercept over the axis of symmetry, and you have 5 points. you should usually have at least 5 points to graph a parabola. Just finding the vertex and the y-intercept is not enough. I need to know that you know how to find the zeros. Okay? If it's an intercept form, I know the zeros right away. -5, -2. Okay, to find the axis of symmetry, just split that in half. Or find the midpoint between the 2 points. So -2 minus 5 is -7 divided by 2, -3.5. That's what I found it to be the other way as well. Okay? So I know the x-coordinate of my vertex is -3.5, but I don't know the y. So I'm going to plug -3.5. Let's make it -7/2. In for x and solve for y. -7/2 plus 10/2, right, is positive, and -7/2 or 7/5. Why do I have fifths? 7/2 plus 4/2 is -3/2. Multiply that together, I get -9/4, which is what I got when I did it in standard form. -9/4. So 1, 2 1/4, there's my vertex. To find the y-intercept, I just plug 0 in for x. So 0 goes, this makes it 5, this makes it 2. 5 times 2 is 10. My y-intercept happens at 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mirror it over. 1, 2, 3. And I have my 5 points. And I started from intercept form this time. Vertex form. Well, to put this one in vertex form, that was intercept form. 7x plus 49/4, 7/2 squared equals what? -40/4 plus 49/4. So this is x plus 7/2 squared equals 9/4. So intercept form for the same equation so now it's an intercept form. And looking at it, I can tell you vertex form. I can look at it and tell you the vertex. What is it?
7/2 and 9.
So -7/2 and -9/4, which is exactly where I found it the other 2 times. Two, 3, 1, 2, 3.5, 1, 2 1/4. Okay. So the intercept of the vertex is what I can see. To find the zeros, I'm going to set this equal to 0 and solve. Take the square root of both sides, plus or minus 3/2, square root of 9/4. -7/2 plus 3/2, or -7/2 minus 3/2. So -7 plus 3 is -4/2, it's -2. -7 minus 3 is -10/2, -5. Same zeros I had up here. Okay, I'm just different ways to get to the same points. 2, 5. To find my y-intercept, I just plug in 0 for x. So I have 7/2 squared. That's 49/4. Minus 9/4 is 40/4. Oops. Which is 10. My y-intercept. Same thing I've been finding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mirror it over, wherever that is, and connect them. I have my parabola 3 different ways. And the process is different for every one you're given. If it's in standard form, you know certain things. If it's in vertex form, you know certain things. If it's in intercept form, you know certain things. To find the other things is a different process. Okay, so let's graph these now. Well, I could write this in vertex form. I also can look at it and tell you the y-intercept. What is it? -1, which also happens to be my vertex. So all I have from this is just my vertex. I need 5 points. So let's find the zeros. Set this equal to 0 and solve. My zeros happen to be at 1 and -1. Now I have 3 points. Well, if I can find one on the right side, I can just mirror it over the y-axis because that's the axis of symmetry. So let's say when x is 2. When x is 2, 2 squared is 4 minus 1 is 3. 2, 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be -2. I have my 5 points. And I can graph. Next one is in standard form. What is the y-intercept? 4. How do I find the vertex? -b over 2a. Vertex happens to be at 2. There's my axis of symmetry at x equals 2. I plug 2 back in here. I get 4. Okay, microphone just came out. 4. Go away. Minus 8 plus 4. That's 0, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's my vertex. My y-intercept I can just mirror over, so I now have 3 points. I need to find the zeros. Is this factorable? X squared minus 4x plus 4.
Yes.
Right? X minus 2 squared. So my 0 happens to be my vertex, which is true because the vertex sits on the x-axis. So now I just need to find one more point on the right. I can mirror it to the left. So let's say x is 1. I'm just going to do 1. When x is 1, 1 minus 4 plus 4. So 1, 1 is on there. So that means this point's on there. Now I've got enough to sketch this graph. Last one on the graphing section is already given to us in vertex form. So I can look at this right away and tell you the vertex. 2, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Opens up because this sign is positive. So if it opens up, will it help me to find any zeros? No, it's not going to go down. From there, it's going to go up, which tells me my 2 zeros are actually imaginary. If I were to actually solve for my zeros, I would get negative square roots, which tells me it never goes through the x-axis. Okay, so finding my zeros won't do me any good. What would do me good is to find the y-intercept. So I plug in 0 for x. -2 squared is 4, plus 4 is 8. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's my y-intercept. I can mirror it over. I have 3 points. Let's just find 2 more. When x is 1, 1 minus 2 is -1 squared is positive 1. So 1, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mirror that over. Now I have enough to graph my parabola. Okay, Same process for 17 and 18, except now I just have to remember solid or dashed and shading. So to graph y equals x squared, this is just the basic quadratic. X is 1, x is 2, y is 4, and the vertex sits here, so I can graph it like this. That's my basic quadratic. And now I just have to decide, should it be solid or dashed? Should be solid because it's or equal to. Where's the shading? Well, I can't use 0, 0. I can't use 1, 1. So let's use 2, 1. Let's use this point. So y equals x squared is what I start with. I'm putting 2, 1 in it. And I want to see if it's greater than. Is 1 greater than or equal to 4? No. This point is not included, so the shading happens inside. Next one, 2x squared minus 3. What is my y-intercept? Negative 3. 1, 2, 3. And what could I do here? I could solve for the zeros. So x is equal to this plus or minus the square root of 3 over 2. Well, just a real quick calculation. Square root of 1.5. It's 1.2 about. So my zeros happen here and here. What else do I know? The y-intercept is also negative 3. Yeah, we already did that. The vertex. If it's 2x squared minus 3, what's b?
The negative 3.
Yeah. This is 2x squared plus 0x. B is 0. Okay, so the x-coordinate on my vertex is 0. Okay, the y-coordinate, when I plug in 0 for x, I get negative 3. So my vertex is my y-intercept. So I just need to find 2 more points. I'm just going to use 3. 2 times 9 minus 3, because it's 2x squared minus 3. 18 minus 3 is 15. So at 3, it's all the way up at 15. 8, 9, 10, and so on. It's somewhere up here. And then I could just mirror that point on the other side at negative 3. And I have enough points for my parabola. Now, is my parabola, should it be solid or dashed? Dashed. Huh. Okay, and now I've got to figure the shading. I can use 0, 0. So I have y is less than 2x squared minus 3. 0 less than negative 3. True?
Yeah. No.
No.
No. So 0, 0 is here, and it's not a solution, which means my shading has to be on the outside. 2 more. Write a quadratic function in vertex form that has the given vertex and passes through the given point. This is vertex form. So I'm going to plug in what I have. The vertex is negative 9, not negative 9, and the point is negative 1. Equals a times negative 7 plus 9 squared minus 9. And now I've got to solve for a. Negative 1 equals negative 7 plus 9 is 2. 2 squared is 4. Add 9. 8 equals 4a. A equals 2. So my formula is y equals 2 times x plus 9 squared minus 9. And then the last one, write the following quadratic form in vertex form. So I set this equal to 0. Divide by -3. What I add is half squared, which is 64. But what I really added to the left was what? 64 times -3, -48. -3 times, no,
I was like that.
64 times negative. 64 times -3, -192. I was doing 16 times 3. Okay, so to get it in vertex form, minus 8 squared plus 192, which is letter C. Axis of symmetry is x equals 8.
Do you need the test back?
Did you say yes?
No. Okay, I recorded this. If you're still not understanding after watching the recording and you need help on certain kinds of problems, then come in and get help.
I understand all
Before
of
you
that
retake it.
graphing. It's
Okay.
just that's a lot.
I understand how to do them, I just don't remember what they're called. Like, how to, yeah.
Parabola?
So then, no.
Well, I would then go and graph some, well,
Or
find some problems and just practice graphing them and come and ask me if they're correct.
quadratic formula is if you ever read it.
I mean, if graphing is what gets you, then find some problems, graph them, and then come and ask me if they're correct for practice.